Awesome, man. Well, let's get right into stuff. So tell me a little bit how you got into the business of real estate.
Yeah, so this has been one of those things that wanted to dive into since even in college, and it never actually happened. So I worked corporate and worked my butt off. Was kind of working my way up the corporate ladder, and just got really tired of it. Met my wife, um, and she was just like, you know what? Was working 80 hours plus per week, traveling, trying to raise money, and was like, nope, I'm done. So I had enough of that and took a year off, did some consulting. I'd also started some other businesses previously. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I ended up taking a nonprofit gig for about 5.5 years, traveled the world, went to all sorts of exotic places. Didn't get paid a lot of money, so it was a labor of love, but I loved what we were doing. But finally, my wife and I, we had our son. We moved from Colorado to Tennessee, and then we started the adoption process, which we thought was going to be really quick, probably like a year or so max. And as it turned out, it was a 5-year process. We ended up living in the Congo for 18 months with our 2-year-old son. And then, we finally were able to go through a very crazy, traumatic adoption process, adopted our two girls, and then came back to the States. And while I was living in the Congo for 18 months, my wife and I, she was doing a lot of the, she would stay back in Congo, and I was in Haiti, I was in Guatemala, Ethiopia, wherever I needed to go for work. So that was pretty tough. And then we finally moved back to the States in Tennessee. And at that point, like, our family changed, our finances kind of changed. A lot of things needed to happen. And so my wife and I just said, hey, we gotta make some changes in our life, to our family, all that. And so it was during that time I listened to a podcast, Bigger Pockets, Tom Kroll, Wholesaling Inc. 2000, I believe it was 2016, because that's when I started doing this. And I heard him, he was ringing the bell, he was all excited and crazy, and I'm like, man, I love this guy. And at the end he said something about his coaching program, so I looked into it. My wife and I talked about it, and then there went 5K on the credit card, joined Wholesaling Inc., and then just started taking massive action. Didn't know what the heck I was doing, and now I'm in real estate. So
That's awesome. So you joined Wholesaling Inc. And then I think back then, and I don't know if they still are, but they were pretty big direct mail guys was usually what they were pushing a lot in terms of
yep,
marketing.
yep. Yep, that's how we got started. Basically, they just said, "Hey, here's some lists. Pull your lists, go on appointments." And they gave more of the basics, but I still, you don't know what you don't know, and you're like, all nervous. And so
Yeah.
I just said, "Hey, what the heck? Like, if I'm going to do this, there's no plan B."
Hmm.
So essentially, stepped away from that job. My wife was crazy because my wife was homeschooling the three kids. And so
Oh,
she didn't have an income. I no longer had an income. And it was like, all right, well, other people are making this work. We're going to figure out, do whatever we need to do till it works. And we were both scared as heck. But, you know, fortunately, we found a couple deals that, we got to the next one. It was just one step after the next, and here we are. But wow, 2 years of not being profitable, spraying and praying, literally just praying. Lord, I need this deal.
yeah. How long did it take after you took that step of joining the program until you got your first one?
So here's what's crazy: I had two deals really quick, probably within 30 days.
Whoa. Okay.
So I can jump into all the mistakes I made early on, but I had a deal put under contract. I remember for 70,000.
Mhm.
Had a buyer the very next day at 100. Everything was great, and then all of a sudden, title work comes back, and we find out from our title company that basically the way that the oh, what was it? It was in a trust, and
Mhm.
it was a trust where it had to be passed down to the next, like the current owner couldn't actually sell it, and so she
Mm.
was going to lose it to tax. Anyways, long story short, my title company says, hey, this is one of the worst estates we've actually seen, and you don't have you cannot buy this house. She cannot sell this house, essentially. So
Mm.
anyways, that happens, and I'm like, oh, this is so great, I'm gonna make 30,000 on my first deal. I'm gonna be a rock star, right? I was all excited. So
Yeah.
what did I do? I went out and was like, well, should I do pay per click? Should I do SEO? And so what I decided to do is I got my carrot site and I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I'm going to go with SEO. Well, I didn't know, right? I didn't know the real differences. I'm like, oh, well, they say that SEO is like when you own the property, right? Versus PPC, you rent it. Well, what I also
Mhm.
didn't know is PPC would generate more leads quicker. So, anyways,
Mhm.
I went the SEO route and I went with one of the higher priced. Like at the time, it was $2,200 a month, and I locked myself into that. And then a couple weeks later, title work comes back for this
Wow.
property, and I'm not going to be able to close on it. So I got myself into a bind. Then I had another property, similar situation, same type of thing. It was like a $33,000 wholesale deal or wholesale fee, assignment fee, I should say. And we had title problems and we absolutely could not close on it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am getting into this, thinking like this is going to be fantastic. And my first two deals that I lock up and have buyers for and had them assigned, now I can't close on them. So I was like freaking out, like, what the heck can I do? What's going on? And
Mm.
Tom and crew just said, hey, you got to keep going on. Don't worry about it. I know it's hard right now, but you got to keep going forward and pushing through
Mhm.
it. And my wife and I are like, oh my gosh, this is not good. So, and then I lock myself in to that contract, and then I'm like really scared. So I'm like, okay, well, now I really have to go find a deal. So it put me
Yeah.
more into a bind, and I found my very first deal on Craigslist, believe it or not.
Huh.
So that's how I initially got my first one. Had no idea what I was doing. I thought, oh shoot, I'm going to flip this thing. Come to find out, a realtor calls me and says, "Hey, are you aware that this is in the historic district?" I'm like, "No. What does that mean?" So she says, "Well, here's the thing. You're probably not going to not be able to do what you want to do to this house." I'm like, "Well, wait a second. Like I was going to extend it further back and I was going to put a second level." And she's like, "Here's the
You're
number
gonna put a
to the."
second level on your first flip?
Yep.
Jeez.
It's funny thinking about this, right? Because here I am, like I have big dreams and big visions, and I'm like, man, it could be a really great house because all the houses around us were like that craftsman style, all with a
Mhm.
second story. So I'm like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. And then I call the historic society, and they're like, yeah, you can't change the footprint. In fact, you can't even change the paint colors on the outside without getting approval from us. And I'm like, oh shoot. So I ended up doing a very minor cosmetic renovation, and then we ended up flipping it. And when it was all said and done, I made $14,000. I'm like, hey, this works.
Yeah. Okay. So you still made money. So
Yes, still made money in spite of myself. Yes.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit too about some of those mistakes early on, because a lot of people are, listening to the show. Maybe they haven't done a deal, or maybe they're doing their first 5 or 10, right? And I think that's an important thing. Like a lot of people don't talk about the mistakes that they made early on that could have shortcutted them if they knew something at the time.
Yeah. So I would say, I don't know, man, probably my biggest mistake. And I see investors do this all the time. It's crazy. So, and it doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm limited on the amount of spend at the time. So I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't know what I started with, probably like 500 or 1,000 postcards, probably 500 a week. That's probably what they told us. That's probably what I had budget for.
Mhm.
And it was crazy because, I'd go on appointments and then I'd come home and there were calls and I was like fearful of answering the phone, or people would not leave a message or they would leave a nasty message, right? And so I'm just like, well, I don't know what I should do. Should I call them? Should I not call them? And I was just I was kind of fearful. And so what ended up happening was I stayed consistent with my mail, which, hey, stay consistent with your marketing, that's a good thing.
Mhm.
However, I started getting a whole bunch of leads and I wasn't following up with them, so literally
Mhm.
I was wasting money. I was just like, oh well, I didn't call them in the last couple days. Oh, it's fine. Well, I'll call them like in a couple days from now. And then I would never call them.
Mhm.
And so literally I got to a point where it was like the hot leads, I would go on those appointments. But anything else, if I was like overwhelmed or backed up or had something family going on or couldn't take that call and I didn't get to it that day, like I just didn't get back to them. Or
Mhm.
something would happen where it just so basically the area that I preach the most right now is follow up, right? Like anyone gets a call back, doesn't matter what they say, or even if they say, hey, remove me from your list, we'll remove them from our list, but we have a remove from list funnel where we will now follow up with them a year from now or whatever. And so
Mm,
pretty much what I used to do when I started out was like I was just giving away money. I was just
mhm,
because I had these assumptions in my head and was thinking like, oh, these people are mad at me, so I shouldn't call them back. And so I had to like get over that really, really quick. And finally, I got to a point. I just said, "What am I doing? Like, I'm wasting money here."
mhm.
So it took a hard message from the Wholesaling Inc. tribe where they're just like, "Dude, either get over your fear, or find other marketing channels, um, or this just isn't going to be for you." So
Yeah. Wow. And then at the time, you were still marketing to Nashville at that time for a
I was.
while. And at a
Yep. So I was in the Yep, I was in the Nashville area.
Yeah, and at a certain point, you decided to switch markets. Do you want to talk a little bit more about why you did that and where you switched to?
Yeah, for sure. So, probably was like 2 years before I could really figure this whole thing out. So, I had more success doing flipping. So,
Mm,
I ended up managing my flips out of the gate. And in Nashville, it's been a hot market for a long time. But I was managing a couple crews and also doing my lead gen, taking the calls, taking the appointments, doing everything. So once I started getting busier, that's when I really started struggling with my leads, like what I was talking about. I really was like, holy cow, what am I going to do? And then, I think the last straw for me was I was at a house, end of the day, the guy's doing some work in the shower, and he needed to finish his work in order for my other subs to get in after him. And so
mhm,
he's like, hey man, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be here at 7 a.m. So sure enough, the guy isn't here at 7. I'm calling him, hey, where are you at? We got people waiting on you. 2 hours later, I finally reach him, and he's in Memphis. And I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? He's like, oh, not too much. I'm in Memphis right now. I'm like, Memphis, you told me you were going to be here at 7. Oh, well, something came up. I had to go. I'm like, oh, man. So I was so frustrated. I'm like, man, this is adult daycare. Flipping houses and managing contractors to me was adult daycare. And I'm like, I just had enough. So with a young family and, my guys wanted to be at the houses really early. I'm like, man, I can't even have breakfast with them. I'm gone before they're up. I get home. I've got maybe an hour with them. I'm just dog tired. And then, put them to sleep. And then I'm working on my business again till like sometimes 2 in the morning. So it just got to a point where I started to figure out the wholesaling side of it. And then we started to also do land and then mix in rentals. And so something just clicked about 2 years in for us where
mhm,
I'm like, man, I'm starting to like assigning properties more than I am swinging the hammer or managing crews. And so it was kind of at that
mhm,
time where I'm like, yeah, but I'm still really busy. I'm a one man show, and I needed to get out of my own way. So
mm,
ultimately, I came to the realization that I had to build a team. I had to start delegating things. And so my parents were living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I had been going down there since the year I was born every summer for vacation. And so I'm like, you know what? This is a good excuse to look into a market that I know a little bit. My parents live in, so it's an excuse to go see them. And so that's how I chose the market. That and in my research, I'm like, man, it's a little bit fragmented. It wasn't quite as big, not even close to as big as Nashville. And I'm like, hey, I think we can go here and have a little bit of success. So made that switch in like 2020. And so by
mhm.
then, my business in Nashville, we were a 7-figure business. We had bought a 19 unit and an 8 unit apartment building. I think that year we went from 0 to 50 rentals in 11 months.
Whoa.
So I went from not having my business dialed in for 2 years to the next 11, 12 months, really getting it dialed in, really successful relative to where I was. But I was still doing everything. I was worn out and just felt like, hey, I need to make that switch. So literally, I got a call from a wholesaler in Myrtle
Mhm.
Beach. I'm coming back from the mountains in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and this guy has a property for me, and he says, "Hey, I think you might like this rental." So I can barely see the property on video, and I'm just like, "Yeah, sounds good. Let's just do it, right? Let's just do it." So I buy the property and I said, "Hey man, do you have any contract?" Because I had nothing, man. I didn't know anybody in the market, no realtor friends. This was the only guy. He was another wholesaler, and so he gets me that property. And I said, "Hey, do you know anybody that might be able to help with the renovation?" So he connects me with the guy, and the guy was really honest with me, and he said, "Hey, here's what we need to do. Here's what here's how I can make this happen. Timeline, all that." But I appreciated like he was very honest with me and very direct from Massachusetts. And I'm like, man, I'm like, I like this guy. So second time I talked to him, we just say, hey, yeah, let's do it. And we really hit it off. And from there, he renovated. So that was a rental property. And then we did a flip. And I'm like, man, like this guy is good. He knows his numbers. He's solid. He's
Mhm.
not afraid of confrontation. So literally, I'm just like, hey man, like, have you ever done acquisitions before? He's like, acquisitions, what's that? I'm like, man, what if I get you to go on some of these appointments and I'll show you how to negotiate. I'll teach you how to do that. But like you use your construction background and your skills that you already have, and then
Mm.
let's see if we can do some deals together. So, anyways, he's like, yeah, man, that's cool. I'm up for whatever. So send him on a first appointment. And I didn't give him any information. I just said, go do your thing. Go look at the house, talk with the lady, find out a little bit about her story, and tell me what you think it's worth. So he calls me at in the middle of that appointment. He goes, "Hey man, I think I screwed up." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Dude, she's crying." I'm like, "You didn't screw up." I go, "Whatever you did," I said, "Whatever you did must have been good." And so he was kind of telling me the story. And he said, "Yeah, well," he said, she took me through the house and she wanted to know, what I thought about it. Anyways, he basically to the number of three other quotes from contractors, not people trying to buy the house. She was looking to have it renovated.
Mhm.
He was within like $500 of three quotes. And she, when he gave the number of how much work needed to be done in this house, she just started crying. And he was like, "Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." She's like, "No, no, no." She's like, you're the fourth person that's come in here. The others I wanted to do the work, and they said it was going to cost about $80,000, and your number is right there. And she's like, "I just knew I didn't have that money, and I was just hoping that someone might be able to buy my house." So he calls me and says, "Jeremy, our number's 50,000." Well, I didn't tell him that, but my number was 53. So he actually came in a little bit less.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that first deal, it was good cop, bad cop because he was the bad cop first, and he came in with 50, and he said, "Hey, ma'am, I'm going to have my partner call you back, and he may or may not be able to do anything else, but I just wanted to." Let you know what I thought we can do, and my partner will take it from here. So that's how we did our very first deal. We put that thing under for 52 or 52.5, whatever it was, and it was really really successful. And I'm like, man, this is the guy. Like, I'm going to
Mhm.
partner with him. So from that moment on, our goal was to generate enough of a business, enough leads to get him out of swinging the hammer to being the guy that's negotiating and helping to build our team. So that was how we started, man.
Wow. And what do you think? Because you said your business, it was in Nashville, went from 0 to 50 rentals a year. Was that in Myrtle Beach when you went down there?
So that was actually in Nashville.
It was in
Um,
Nashville. Okay.
so it was in Nashville. So once all that happened, I had people around me saying, "Well, why are you switching markets?" And what, like, it seems like you figured out you're doing really well. And I was like, "Yeah, we are, and it's going good." But the problem is, I was overwhelmed. I was still doing
Mm,
lead gen. I was still taking calls, still managing contractors. And the only way I felt like I could get out of my own way was to simply go to a virtual market where I could no longer go to the houses. And
yeah.
so it was like I knew my own limitations and weaknesses. And
Hmm.
so when I met this guy, I'm like, well, wait a second. He already knows the construction side of it. I'm going to teach him how to negotiate the deals. He's going to be better in person. I already knew like he's going to be better in person anyways.
Hmm.
And so that allowed me to now focus on, okay, how do I run a business instead of be completely immersed in it doing every task?
Yeah.
So My superhuman strength, if I have such a thing, is lead gen. It's marketing. It's like the visionary side of the business, and then
Hmm.
building those teams. And so working with him, he was now able to take a lot of the load off of me. And then we hired an assistant. We hired someone to be on the phones. So as we grew, we continued to invest and delegate and focus on our superhuman strength. And his is closing deals, negotiating,
Hmm.
construction. Like those all went really, really well with acquisitions. And then mine was, hey, set it up so that he's got enough leads that will support a business.
Yeah. What do you think clicked for you, even in Nashville, right? When that allowed you to go from kind of, you said, basically not making money for 2 years to boom, you got 50 rentals in a year, you do a bunch of deals. Like what was the turning point there?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest thing was, and I always tell people this now, if you have no leads, you have no business.
Hmm.
Okay. And so in Nashville, we were doing, mostly direct mail. I was paying for SEO, but I wasn't getting any leads. So while I paid, probably $25,000 in a given year, I didn't get many leads. So in order to invest, I had to really kind of work through my own fears.
Hmm.
And that was a huge piece. So it was like, man, do we invest in that next channel? And that next channel for us was PPC. And
Okay.
so it was like, all right, we got 90 days. If this doesn't work, we're going to have some cash flow issues. And so once we saw that PPC works, we started to get like 2 to 3 deals a month. And we're like, holy cow. And again, this was 2000. And at the time, this was 2018 that we started investing in PPC
Hmm.
in Nashville. It wasn't nearly as crazy as it has gotten now. Right.
Sure.
And so, we were able to, with a budget of like $2,500 a month, we were able to get 2 to 3 deals. That changed the game for us because at that point I realized, oh shoot, like it's not that we couldn't close on deals. It was we weren't getting the quality of leads that we needed. We needed motivated people that we were a good match for.
Hmm.
So we went PPC. We invested in a different company for SEO. That started working really well. They got us ranking really high. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden, we're getting some quality leads. Then we went to cold calling. And all of a sudden, it's like our whole business shifted. Our whole business changed. It was like once we got over that fear, invested in the lead gen, now it made me see, oh my gosh, it's not me. It's we didn't have decent leads to be
Hmm.
able to go and put under contract. And so once we did, we knew we had them under for good prices. So I think the big thing for me was just getting over that fear of, hey, at some point you have to just trust the process and you need to invest in your business. And so once the leads started coming in, we did a better job of closing those out. And then we also, at that point, started to invest a little bit more into follow up. Now, it was still a
Hmm.
weak spot for our business, but a lot of times leads would come in and it was like, oh, that's a dead lead. There was no one following up with them. When in reality, that's one of the strongest parts of our business today. So
Hmm.
we started to one by one figure out, okay, what really is going to move the needle. Number one, it was lead gen. Number two, it was okay. Let's continue to add channels, and then we were like, okay, well, we've got all these leads and nothing's happening. So now we need to invest in the follow up. What does that look like? What are other people that are doing 5 and 8 and 10 deals a month? What does that look like? And so just slowly, step by step, started to figure out, okay, this is what's going to make a good business.
Yeah. What does your process or your systems look like today for follow up? You said it's a big part of your business today.
Yeah, it's a huge part of our business. So, we did it a little bit in Nashville. We've tried different CRMs, and man, the best CRM is the one that you're going to utilize, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I hear people arguing about what's the best CRM, and I'm like, honestly, it doesn't matter. Like the one that you're going to use, the one that is going to work for your team, that's the best CRM. So we dabbled with, I think, three. One was on Podio, one was off Podio, and then we went back to a Podio CRM, and we've been using that for I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years. But anyways, our follow up. So I think when we started in Myrtle Beach that first year, we did over 30 deals. And I was like,
Hmm.
shoot. we can really build this business. We could really do well. And so those 30 deals, we went from 0 buyers to like 1,000 buyers in the course of about 12 months.
Hmm.
But what we noticed in our first year working together was that our assignment fees they were like 12,000
Hmm.
on average. And so in that second year, we went from 30 deals to 48 deals, and our average assignment fee went from 12,000 to over 20,000.
Hmm.
So that made a big difference. So over the course of that time, we continued to invest in more channels. And my philosophy starting out in this market was, how can we be the authority? How can I make my partner Adam? How can I
Hmm.
make him the guy that everyone thinks of when they think of selling your house fast or selling your house for cash?
Hmm.
So I told him this when we started out, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Let's just get some deals." Right?
Yeah.
That was his response to me, and it was great. I mean, we had only met each other like one time over video, and we had been
Hmm.
partnering. The first time I actually came out there was like 6 months after we started working together.
Hmm.
So we really had to put a lot of faith into each other, into the process. But after that first year, we realized two things. One, let's build a brand where the leads are coming inbound, but also where people are recognizing us. So,
Hmm.
yes, you can get leads from Facebook, but you're also building a brand from Facebook. So,
Hmm.
it's a short term play and a long term play. And so, our goal was, let's build out the channels, right? So, we took one, made it work, made some money, invested in the next one. And we just kept doing that. So, that's part of it. And then the other part was the follow up. Our first year, we weren't doing any follow up, or it was weak. Let's just say our follow up was weak. So in year two, we decided to really focus on our systems, the automated follow up in our CRM. So instead of
Hmm.
just saying, "Oh, well, they didn't like our offer," we'll catch up with them in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. No, we created a follow up sequence for every type of lead. So
Hmm.
if you go on an appointment and you make an offer and they're like, not really sure, not ready, they'll get a certain follow up. If you go on an appointment and they reject your offer, say, no, that's not going to work for me, or no, that won't work right now, then there's a separate follow up, right? Then if your call team is trying to get in touch with someone, the lead comes in and then they just can't set an appointment, then the lead ghosts them. Well, we've got a separate follow up for that. So we've literally have about 12, no, we have, I think, 15 different sequences that are a
Hmm.
combination of where people are at situationally. So we don't focus on the lead. We don't focus on, hey, is this a expired listing or is this a probate lead? We don't care about that. We
Hmm.
focus on what's the situation that we're in. Did we go on an appointment? Did we make an offer? Did we not make an offer? Is this one where they want retail? Is this one where we're now sending over to our agent, and now it's a
Hmm.
hot listing potentially for agent? So the philosophy was, hey, let's make this so that there's no lead left behind. Let's fill the
Hmm.
gaps and build out those systems. So we have RVM, we have SMS. Our system, we could tie in emails. I don't actually use that. I probably should, but the calling, the RVM, and the SMS to those follow up changed the game for us. And
Yeah.
so in the process, what we noticed was literally 90% of all of our appointments were not were not converting. We would get 1 in 10 under
Mm.
contract. So what we realized is, holy cow, we need to really focus on those people after the fact. And so now we're at a point where we're getting people that are in our system from, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years ago, that, we're still following up with, and we're landing those deals. So I don't know if that answers your question, but those are
Yeah.
some of the big learning, points that we gained from switching markets.
Yeah. Any specific things that you're doing around, let's just take one example, right? Let's say you go on an offer appointment, it's a qualified, you realize it was a good appointment to go on, but there was just not an alignment on price. Like it wasn't a retail lead, it was an investor lead, but there was no alignment on price. What does that follow up look like? I mean, I know it's text and RVMs, but are you doing anything to put a spin on it so it's not just like, hey, like, what do you think about our offer? Like, so it's not just not just annoying and more like human sounding? Or like, you have any specific things you could share around that?
Um, so I'll be honest, it's actually a little bit vague. We leave them a little bit vague and we leave them personal. So how do we talk in
Oh,
our company? So we
okay.
try to personalize them as best we can to us or the acquisition manager. We're also a little bit vague because we know these people are talking to two and three people sometimes. And
Hmm.
so, instead of saying, "Hey, this is, Adam from Myrtle Beach Home Buyers," we might just say, "Hey, thanks for letting us come by. Um, have you had a chance to review the cash offer?" And
Hmm.
so we leave some of our so there's some of our marketing that's very, very clear, and then there's some things that are very vague. And so we do the follow-ups vague because we want them to ask, well, who is this? Or sometimes they say, hey, they know who it is. We're not intentionally trying to be vague, but we're also like trying to keep this conversational, like just like I would text you. If you have my
Hmm.
number, we assume they have your number because we're sharing that information. So we're just assuming. So, that's kind of how we handle that. But here's the thing: our big, like our strength isn't come in with a cash offer, just hit them with the
Hmm.
hammer. We kind of look at it as, hey, we have a lot of options to offer. And so
Hmm.
maybe this is going to be retail, or
Hmm.
maybe this is going to be a cash offer. Maybe we're going to buy your house sub two. Of course, we use very simple language, right? About taking over the mortgage payments, or what if the bank, would you be okay with the bank having to wait on getting paid off, using different language instead
Hmm.
of like sub two. No one knows what subject to is, right? So you do that, and now all of a sudden they're like, well, what's that? Or what's a terms offer? So we try to stay away from jargon. We use that with our own
Hmm.
team, but we try to make it as simple as possible for people. We just say, hey, listen, take us off the table, even if we're not your best option. Even if we're not your buyer, just remove us from the equation. How can we help you? Like what is the best option? Or and
Hmm.
so we like to walk them through that process. We want to kind of lead them, but we want them to feel like they're in control and for them to talk it out. And you know what? Sometimes by eliminating ourselves, they come back and say, well, hey, even though this wasn't their best option or didn't seem like it, now that we've gone through all the options, like we want to work with you, right?
Hmm.
So, they talk about rapport building, they talk about, mirroring and all these things, and all that is true and right. And I think that we just look at it as, listen, like truly, we actually care, like directing you in the right place. Like, what's the
Hmm.
best option for you? So we feel like for us, where our strong point is, if we can get in the door and have a real conversation with someone and they're willing to talk through, sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes
Hmm.
they just want that offer, or maybe they just don't want to deal with a realtor or they had a bad experience, whatever that is. Fine, we don't care. We just want to make sure that we're not trying to convince them, or we're not trying to con them into it, right? It's like,
Hmm.
you guys make this decision. If your house is in tip top shape and you can get top dollar, we'll tell you, like, you can get top dollar for your house. Why did you call us? Have you spoken with the realtor, right? Have you thought about renting it? Have you, and we walk through all those options. And sometimes people are like, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're probably not the best option. And we're cool with that. We're like, hey, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I would say, even though people sometimes will say that, we still put them on our follow up, or we connect them with, our realtor. And
Hmm.
we convert some of those leads. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do that too. But I would just say that our follow up is, unless the house sells, we're dealing with a really nasty human being that we're like, you know what, we just don't want the hassle of dealing with someone like
Hmm.
this. Or it's a house that's just like, man, this thing's falling down. There's really no value there. Those are really the only three times that someone is being removed to our database. We'll follow up with them for 12 years. We don't care. We'll see
Yeah.
where they're at.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of times you miss stuff in your system. You look back and you're like, oh, sold to someone else. Guess they did want to sell. I would have paid that
yeah,
price. So,
exactly.
so you
Exactly.
have a little bit of a unique marketing channel that actually the first time you and I talked, I didn't even know it existed, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about that marketing channel and how you use it in your business?
Yeah. So, full transparency, when I transitioned from Tennessee to South Carolina, um, I thought the things that would work in one market would translate the same in another market. And to some extent they do, right? But one thing I noticed in Tennessee or in Nashville that worked really well for me was pay per click. Well, when I moved to South Carolina, pay per click was not working nearly as well. Different market,
Mhm.
very fragmented. A lot of people coming down for vacation or golf or they have second homes there, and it just we just weren't getting the search volume, and it just didn't work the same. So we had to reset our expectations. We looked at cold calling. What did that look like? Well, Tennessee's the South, but South Carolina is a little bit different, or the response was, because in Nashville, like, we had callers that were out of the country. And so in Nashville it was like, that's not really that big of a deal. But in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, there are a lot of people that said, "Hey, we don't need all these people from out of country calling us. We can't understand you." And it was just kind of a different mentality. And
Mhm.
so in Nashville, we had a lot of success with cold calling. In Myrtle Beach, like, eh, not really the same response. We realized, like, our acquisition team said, "Hey, maybe we need to we needed to focus on more inbound, or
Mhm.
maybe we need to hire an American." Um, to do that job. So, anyways, through that learning process, we realized, like, oh shoot, like, what are the channels that are working for us? Well, SEO started to work. Pay per click, we would do, have mild success. Direct mail started working. So our goal was, hey, let's build the channel and then build the next channel and the next channel
Mhm.
and next channel. And so I was true to what I told my partner. I said, hey, I'm going to make you the face of Myrtle Beach. I'm going to try to make Myrtle Beach home buyers the company that everybody thinks of when they want to sell their house for cash or without a realtor or whatever. And so, we went and we added Facebook ads, and then we added radio, and we got on 7 radio stations right away. Um, and then we had a little bit of success with radio. We're getting tons of leads from that. That changed our business, really. And people
Mhm.
started to really know about us. We had a really good commercial. In fact, we haven't even changed it in like almost 2.5, almost 3 years. Um, and then we said, okay, what's next? Well, at the time, Tony came out with the program, the TV program,
Mhm.
and we immediately, like, I jumped on that right away,
Mhm.
and we still use TV, and Tony, his team, still manages that for us. And so that was a game changer too, because now all of a sudden, people might hear us on the radio, and that's great, but
Mhm.
now they're seeing us on TV, and so people are like, "Wow, like, this is the company. We
Mhm.
see you guys everywhere. We hear your ads." And so it just created that force multiplier, if you will, right? So
Mhm.
now all of a sudden the brand started to be known. It wasn't just direct mail or, SEO or whatever. It's like people are seeing us everywhere. And so we did TV, and I loved it. I still use it today. I still love it. But I was like, man, like, I don't know if 10 people or 10,000 people are watching a show when our ad airs, right? You just
Mhm.
don't know. And so what's really interesting about TV is you're kind of buying the space or the show. Okay.
Mhm.
And so I had a buddy that called me about 2 years ago now, and he says, Jeremy, here's the project I'm working on, and it's called CTV. I'm like, CTV, what's that? And he said, well, here's how it works. Do you know how you watch regular TV? And you watch the commercials, and maybe you have a response to it or whatever. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I got that. He says, well, what if you could actually pick the people that you want to watch a TV ad? So let's say someone is streaming TV on Hulu or any other streaming platform.
Mhm.
What if someone's streaming and you can target the very people that fit your avatar, right? That are the people you want to reach. What if you can target them? I'm like, well, that would be pretty cool. And so I started asking them all these questions. And so ultimately, come to find out, they're invested. My partners are invested in a um, connected TV platform called TV
Mhm.
Scientific. And so we worked with the platform, and we figured out what would work, or what we thought would work, for real estate investors.
Mhm.
And so what ultimately happens is we created it in such a way where you can create an audience, like a lookalike audience that you used to be able to do in Facebook.
Yeah.
And so you can say, hey, anyone that's over 40 years old owns a home, home value between this range or under this amount or whatever. You can literally target the person down to the house level.
Hmm.
So you could
Like to the
literally
address
say, hey,
level?
to the address level.
Wow. So you could export a
And
list from their mailing, for example, and then say show ads to
exactly.
these people. Wow.
Exactly. So here's what we did. We started it out with two different campaigns. One is more of your lookalike campaign, and then the
Mhm,
other is your retargeted campaign, right?
mhm,
So now all of a sudden, my guys are like, hey, here's what we need. We need your list of all the people that you're marketing to, that you're mailing, whatever. And
mhm,
so there's a couple really super cool things about CTV that are unlike any other marketing channel. And one is you could literally target your list, your exact list. So let's just say you're pulling data fresh every week. You've got a probate lead. Now you send that out. It hits that list. Maybe your direct mail doesn't hit for 2 weeks,
yeah,
but those heirs or the PR or the executor is now seeing your ad. Oh shoot, Myrtle Beach home buyers. So you're actually able to find them. Or
mhm,
maybe you're into buying single family portfolios and your list is like anyone that's 10 plus properties, right? Whatever it is, or tired landlords. Literally, you're going to find those people. So here we go. Here's my 10 plus list. It's uploaded in the system. The system matches them. Boom, there's John Smith. He owns 15 properties. He sees
mhm,
the ad. Now, here's the thing, there's a couple things that happen. Number one, when people are watching streaming TV versus regular TV, it's way different. So people tell me, should I do TV or streaming TV? I say do both. It's a better way to hit it. If you want to be
mhm,
everywhere, it's the way I would do it. And so with streaming TV, those people are actually want to watch TV, right? So if somebody has, let's say, the game on in the background, they might be cooking, they might be doing something else. You don't know if they're paying attention or not. But
mhm,
if they're streaming, they've chosen a show to watch, right? So
mhm.
they're paying attention. And the best part is they're going to get a 30-second unskippable ad from Myrtle Beach homebuyers.
Right.
So now they want to watch, they're stuck watching my 30-second ad, right? And so they probably aren't going to just get up right then and there and be like, oh, shoot, I got to call these guys. No, because they were sitting down, probably comfortable, probably maybe
Mm,
with a drink in their hand or popcorn or whatever, maybe watching a movie with someone else or a show. And, but they're going to remember you, right? It's more
mhm,
memorable. And so you're now hitting less people than maybe TV hits a lot of people, right?
mhm,
And you don't necessarily know how many times they're getting hit. Well, we can track the average times that people are seeing our ad. And so we want people to see our ad 5, 7, 10 times. So that
yeah,
retargeted list is super, super powerful. It's the right people at the right time, seeing my ad multiple times. And so the mentality is not, oh, I have to get a deal from this channel on day one. It's actually the more you do this, the longer you run these ads, the more familiarity. And then when people are ready to sell, whether it's 1 week or 1 year, boom, they're calling Myrtle Beach home buyers, or they're calling that company in their market that they've seen many times over. And so that's a little bit how connected TV works. And what I love
mm,
about it is just imagine, okay, imagine you're one of these nationwide virtual wholesalers that, you're doing big direct mail, you're doing big PPC. Well, the third leg, the trifecta,
mhm,
is connected TV. Here's why. Because if someone clicks your PPC ad and they go to your
mhm,
website, we have the tracking pixel, whether it's your website or your landing page, wherever you're directing people. So now, boom, we're going to retarget them and they're going to see a 30-second ad.
right.
Oh, shoot, I just saw these guys, or hey, I was just looking at their website. Well, go figure. Now
Yeah.
they're going to see you on TV. And so, and that's just not TV. It could be TV, it could be an iPhone or an iPad.
Mhm,
So there's a lot of different things you can do, but you're reaching people who are streaming on all those different devices. And
yeah.
so if you have direct mail where you're also directing people to a website, I know some people don't do that, some people do. But if you are, and people are going to that site, now all of a sudden, boom, they get picked up by that pixel
Mhm,
and they're seeing you on TV, or you're following them everywhere they go on TV. So that's how we run our marketing. And so there's all sorts of ways that you literally, I look at it like a sniper. You're just picking off the very people that you want or you think you want to buy from. So you
Hmm.
can do that down to the zip code level, down to the house level, the home value. I mean, you can everything that everyone that you're trying to reach, whether you're texting them, cold calling them, sending direct mail, you can literally reach them through TV, and the level of credibility that you get when people see you on TV or on their device is like, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden, you become legitimate immediately. And so if you're doing those other marketing channels, what CTV does is it lifts all ships because it's going to improve your SEO, right? Because SEO now turns into, oh, shoot, now I'm seeing them on TV, or
Hmm.
PPC, the same thing. So we try to run our campaigns in such a way where people aren't just doing one or two marketing channels. The ideal person for connected TV is someone that is doing 4 to 5 deals a month already and is
Hmm.
already running 4 to 5 channels, 4 to 5 marketing channels, and has some level of brand recognition already, but they want to
Mm.
go from, hey, people know who we are, to we want to dominate this market. We want to be everywhere.
Yeah. And are you creating different types of ads, for example? Like you've mentioned, like if you put a probate list in there, right? Are you creating an ad specifically around probate, or is it just more still serving them your general ad, just kind of for brand awareness?
So you can do whatever you want. What
Hmm.
we do is we have 3 ads right now. You can run one ad. So we tested this multiple ways. So I was the guinea pig, and
Okay.
so I went from I went from 48 deals in 2021, and I said, okay, I'm not going to change my marketing for 12 months. The only variable I'm going to add is connected TV.
Hmm.
So in doing that, we went from 48 deals to 86.
Hmm.
Now, people tell me, "Oh, so all those extra houses are from CTV? You can attribute them all to CTV?" And what I say is, no, it doesn't really work that way. What I say is, people are seeing us on radio, on TV, they're finding us online. And
Hmm.
so the guy that searched for us maybe on or heard our radio ad now goes to our website and now sees our connected TV ad or our
Hmm.
Facebook ad. So which is it? Is
Right.
that SEO? Is that radio? Is it Facebook? Is it CTV? And so the way I try to tell investors to look at it, because it's hard, because I want to see perfect attribution, right? I want to see a
Sure.
one-to-one. They came from
Yeah.
direct mail or they came from Facebook, but it doesn't work that way. And
Hmm.
so the investors that are going to have the most success are the ones who are doing already something, already have a recognizable brand to some level, some extent. And then now you want to take it where you want to saturate your market, you want to dominate that market, where CTV is going to help lift your Facebook ad performance, lift your SEO performance, list all of the other channels. And so that's how we look at it.
Hmm.
And now I don't measure what's my return on individual marketing channels. I measure what's my return on total ad spend.
Okay.
And so it's just a
Yeah.
different way of looking at your business. And that's how we run it.
Yeah. And then, so the three ads you have, is that just to keep it fresh so that people aren't seeing the same thing constantly? Or are they trying to hit different kind of trigger points to maybe get
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
to
So
reach out? Or
yes, so that's a great point. So I guess I didn't answer your question when you asked. They're not really geared toward people's situation, or they're not geared toward a
mm,
probate list, or someone that's got a great house or ugly house or whatever. It's simply, we're hitting what we're trying to say, the key points, a couple different ways. They're very similar commercials.
hmm.
And so, like, we've looked at it a couple different ways. One is, do we need to run multiple commercials at once? Are people getting ad fatigue if we just do one? But interestingly enough, the data is all over the board for different clients. So I'll be honest with you, we're not seeing ad fatigue. We're really not. And you
Mm,
can run one ad, typically one ad for 6 months to a year without changing it out. And so
wow.
we're testing how we run our campaigns. Do we run one? Do we run two? We've never ran three at one time. We've only done one and two.
Hmm.
But it's really interesting because we're looking at the data, right? It's all in the data.
Hmm.
So are we having better success with the lookalike campaign? Are we having better success with the retargeting campaign? And so it's really interesting because some months we have better response from the actual TVs, people that are seeing it on their TVs. And then other months, like this month right now, I tested something totally different out where I'm only running ads to the TV, no mobile devices,
Hmm.
and my numbers are actually way down. So,
Huh.
we test these things, we monitor them, we talk through it with the campaign manager. And so next month, I'm actually going to go back because my performance of my ads was actually better when I ran ads to my to iPhones and iPads, those mobile devices. So we're constantly doing this. We're constantly changing up, but we have now over 12 months worth of data, and we're seeing some patterns of who is most successful, why are they
Hmm.
most successful, and so we're continuing to push the limits. And I love being the guinea pig because I'm like, you know what? You don't find what works sometimes until you find what doesn't work. So
Sure. Yeah. And then how does like with connected TV, is it similar to Facebook where you're kind of paying like per an impression, or is it like how do you get charged for that as an advertiser?
yeah. So it's impressions right now. So one thing that's really cool, and you said at the beginning, you said, "Hey man, I didn't even know people were doing this. Like I didn't even know this channel was a thing."
Yeah.
Um, so all the big companies, all the big media companies and advertisers, they're gearing up to do this. The ones who have kind of initially adopted it are some of the bigger ones with bigger budgets. But
Sure.
this is going to be something that is going to be mainstream very quickly. And right now, I'll tell you, um, inventory is probably as cheap as it's ever going to be because there's a lot more inventory. There's new platforms because of the way the targeting is. Like you could literally just say, hey, I want to hit someone in Jacksonville, like in this one zip code in Jacksonville. They have to
Hmm.
make this much money. So in one neighborhood, you might have maybe all three of the people, right? All three of the people receive, get your ad. But
Hmm.
depending on what the criteria is, it may only be one of them, and then the two neighbors next door don't get, aren't getting the ads because they don't fit the buy criteria. So
Hmm.
it's really really unique. It allows the little guys to really focus in on who their customer is and serve ads to them and look a lot bigger than they really are. So that's what I love about it. And it really, like, you mentioned Facebook ads. Yeah, it is by impressions. So right now, like for example, 150,000 impressions, which
Hmm.
means that's 150,000 commercials,
Yeah.
right? 30-second commercials. That's going to cost you around $5,000. So that's their starting point. And I'll just be totally transparent. That's
Yeah.
our starting point. So if someone's coming in and they're like, oh, I don't really have a budget, I would say, hey, if you don't really have a budget, two things are probably happening. One is you don't probably have a recognizable brand, right?
Hmm.
You're still probably only focusing on one or two marketing channels, maybe. So people don't really know you. And so that's not going to be the right time for CTV. And then secondly, I'd say, hey, if you don't have the budget for CTV, hey, we're happy to talk to you. We'd love to share how it works. We can get into some of the weeds with you. But really, you want to get to that point where you're doing 4 or 5 deals a month. You've got an established brand and you really want to saturate. That's when I see the most the most effectiveness from CTV. Get to that point
Hmm.
first, then CTV can help take it to the next level.
And is it because it's not really as much like direct response as your other typical stuff because of just the way that people are when they're watching those, that they're not going to pick up the phone and call right away like they would with like a standard TV commercial? Or why do you think that is?
So some people will pick up right away, but I think what tends to happen is a lot of people are paying attention to that show and they're already like, I'm sitting down to watch TV, I'm just going to chill out for a while.
Yeah.
So, but what we see is some people, like we've got one version where there's a scan, so you can scan the QR code. So some people
Oh,
will
okay.
scan the QR code and they'll come back later.
Mm,
Or what they'll do is they'll take a picture of the commercial or the phone number, and then they'll come back later. And so what we actually see in the data is the more times we serve the ads, the more likely they are, the more times they'll visit the site. And so we
Sure.
just know that the longer these ads run, the more these people will start coming, and then even more frequently over time. So I think that's part of the pattern. Um, the other thing too is um, I think sometimes people aren't just ready to sell, just like in other situations. So,
Mm.
or what we'll get a lot is, hey, they'll call the number one time, and we'll call them back and they're like, oh, sorry, we were just trying to save your number in our phone. We just wanted to call the number, so we had it, and we
Yeah.
were going to save you. So, but one thing I can say is a couple things that happened for us, and I can't predict this. I can't tell you that, hey, you use CTV and you're gonna make $100,000. You're gonna close 3 deals in your first month. I can't make those promises. But what I can say is, for us, in our first month, we had a 26% increase in call volume.
Mhm.
We did do 2 deals. They were 2 assignments. One was 61,000 and the other was 15,000. So that for me was like, oh shoot, like I'm good. Like
Yeah. Um,
if we just break even, we don't do another deal, we know we're getting brand awareness, we're already in the positive for the year. So that
yeah.
was a good start. And then what we found is over the course of about 3 to 4 months, our web traffic just started going,
Mm.
straight up. And
Yeah.
so we actually have seen 3x on our web traffic without changing anything else in our marketing. So that's been huge.
Wow. Yeah.
And then over the course of the whole year, our call volume is up over 20%.
Yeah.
Um, so those are kind of the numbers that we've seen in our business. So for me, it's a no brainer because if now I can drive more people to my site, now I'm trying to focus on how do I have a better site? How do I have a better converting site? Right. So
Yep.
if my
Yeah.
site conversion was 10% or 12% or 15%, how do I get it to 17 or 18 or 20? So it's really changed a lot of variables in our business and had to hone in on some other things. So CTV has been great for us.
Yeah. It's kind of this idea, and then people aren't really talking about it much in real estate, but in the marketing industry, I've been talking about it for years. This idea of like omnipresent marketing, right? Where you want to be,
Yep.
they see you somewhere, then you follow them on Facebook, then you're on somewhere else in front of them, or they land on your site, you send them a postcard, right? This whole idea of it's not about just measuring. It's not about getting like one channel is just a way to get them started in the process.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
and so is your guy who's your partner in acquisition guy? Is he the guy on all the TV commercials?
He's the guy, yeah. He's the face of our brand. And actually, it's gotten to a point where maybe we should do something with our other acquisition managers,
Mm,
um, or figure something out because we've had some running jokes about this. But like sometimes if he's not the guy that shows up, our other acquisition managers is like, they show up and they're like, oh, I thought the other guy that's on TV was going to show up at my
yeah,
house, right?
yeah,
But then the flip side happens too, because when he does show up, they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's you!" Like I just can't believe, like I see you all the time on the TV, I hear you on the radio. I can't believe you're at my house. So
yeah.
it has that effect. So we're kind of joking, like maybe we should do a commercial where we have the other acquisition managers in there too, and they're like, "Hey, I'm a member of the team too. I'll be coming to your house maybe too."
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, that was gonna be kind of my question. If like when he walks in, do you feel like it gives him an edge over, let's say that person's getting 3 people to come out to the house? Does he feel like it gives him an advantage because he's just a trusted authority, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the local real estate celebrity, truly, and he's from Massachusetts. He's got the thick accent. So down south, some people either love it or hate it. But the one thing I can say is, whether you love it or hate it, you're going to remember it. You're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
remember his voice.
yeah.
So I when I go to Myrtle Beach, I try to get there like 4 times a year and
Mhm.
spend time with the team, spend time with my partner, and we'll go out and have a meal. And people are like, "Hey, man." Um, how's everything in real estate? And they'll ask him all these questions. And I'm like, Adam,
Whoa.
like, do you know that guy? And he's like, no, man, like that guy, just people come up to me all the time, or he's going through the drive-through and the person at the window is like, hey, you're that guy. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm the Flex Seal guy, or I'm the some other guy? What guy are you talking about? And he's just kind of joking around with them, right? And they're like, no, no, you're the real estate guy. I see you on TV all the time. And they're like, you can't pay. Like I can't let you pay. Like this one's on the house. Um,
That's
or
so crazy.
we'll be at some restaurant and someone says, "Hey, I want to buy you a drink," and does your friend want a drink too? And I'm like, Adam, who is that? He's like, well, every time I come in here, these are just some locals, and if I come in, they always want to buy me a drink and they want to talk about real estate and get my thoughts. I'm like, dude, I thought that was like your cousin or your uncle or something. He's like, no, man. He's like, it's just people just respond that way. And he's like, I'm used to it by now, and he loves it, except when he's with his family trying to have a meal and people will come up, right?
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, it definitely gives a lot of credibility to him. And when he shows up, I mean, he's the guy. So like, they expect him to make the offer that's going to work. And sometimes people just say flat out, they're like, "Hey, I already knew before you were coming here. I did my research on you and your company. I knew that you were the ones I was going to go with, but I just wanted to make sure." And they said, now that you're here, like, we're actually more impressed with you in person. So that makes him feel good, but it also goes a long way to what it says about our business.
Yeah. So another thing that would be a good topic for us to talk about is you're not there, right? You said you go down 4 times a year. So for people who are running a business remotely, even if you do have some people on the ground in the market, is there anything specific you do to make sure you're effectively running it while not being there?
Well, being virtual is a whole different beast, right? So the one of the awesome things about being in an office is you have that like camaraderie and you have that team culture and all of that. And so, we've got two people on the phones that are actually in Tennessee, but I don't see them very often.
Hmm.
And then I'm in Nashville, and then the rest of our team is in South Carolina. So we've got an office there, and it works for us, but we have to have like there's a lot more text messaging that goes on and
Hmm.
text strings. So it's like, you've got acquisition people out in the field, you've got dispo, you've got a transaction coordinator. There's just so much going on. And so like we've gotten really good. Like we've got our deal board, right? That says like, hey, have we gotten EMD? Have we ordered title work? Do we have pictures? And so our transaction coordinator, like that's she's doing a lot of things, but she's got to stay on top of that. And so she's constantly hearing from me, probably more than she wants. I'm like, hey, what's the status on this? Or hey, I don't see anything on the board about having the deposit, or having title work back yet. What's happening? When's closing? So we do a lot of phone calls. We do a lot of text strings because our transaction coordinator is trying to get things lined up, but then she has to find out from the acquisition guy, like, hey, what's going on? What did you tell the seller? The seller needs an advance or this and that. And
Hmm.
so there's just a lot of over communicating, and things when we first started would fall through the cracks. But we've just gotten to a point where we're like, hey, nope, if we have to over communicate, let's over communicate. Let's put the right people in place. And honestly, like the team is everything, because
Hmm.
if we didn't have the right people on our team with the same mindset, we wouldn't be effective. And so I think one piece of advice I could say is like, don't just hire to hire. Make sure you're hiring the right people. And one thing
Hmm.
we've learned that we love is culture index. So that's something that I didn't even know about until my mastermind. And we realized like, holy crap, we were a little bit hiring blind and not
Hmm.
really understanding what we were hiring for. And culture index has been a game changer for my partner and I, and now we're trying to integrate that into our team and then any future hires. So I would definitely say use that as a tool if you can, and don't just hire to hire the right people, because you're stuck with those people. And a lot of times people, there's that philosophy of fire quickly.
Hmm.
But a lot of times people can't do it, or they give people the benefit of the doubt. So you'd rather hire the right people and have good onboarding, good training, and prepare them and train them well. You're investing in a partner in your business. So I see a lot of people just hire quickly without thinking through what they were hiring for, or, oh, we're going to hire this person for this, but really they're going to do these other things over here and this thing over here. And so really hone in what you're hiring for, focus, allow them to be successful, allow them to ask questions. And if they're
Hmm.
high capacity and they can take on other things, great. But that may not be the case, and most likely isn't to start out. And so really hone in on the individual and the job description, and make sure they're a good fit for your team. So we were kind of lucky. I mean, our team has been really, really solid. We've been lucky, but um, we've had our moments there too, and we've had to work through things. And now we're like, shoot, now we know what we know. So
Hmm.
going forward, we're not going to mess around with that. Like, we're going to make sure we're we're finding the right person for that role with the right personality and characteristics and all that. So
Yeah,
that's been huge.
for sure. And then you mentioned offline a little bit before. I think you guys did 80 something deals last year, and I think you kept about 30 something as rentals.
Yep. Yep.
Um, for people who are, I see this a lot of times, people who are running like a wholesale operation, right? Or at least a direct to seller operation, they end up doing a ton of deals, but then you're like, well, how many rentals do you own? And they're like, well, like three, right? So how do you, and it's sometimes a hard balance, right? To say, I'm going to keep these ones as rentals. How do you guys go about that? Or any advice to someone in that kind of seat who's doing a lot of deals, but for whatever reason, they're not keeping a lot of rentals, but maybe they want to, they feel a little trapped.
Yep. Yep. So this is where we were at early on. And so, man, when we made that decision to keep our first rental, I told the seller five times, no, I don't want your property, because we weren't close on price. I wanted it for like 68. She wanted 125. I think finally the last time I said, listen, Deborah is her name, this French lady. I said, I just am not close to you. And I said, I'd love to buy this house, but I'm here. I'm at 75. That is my absolute best I can go. She goes 77 and it's the deal. I said, fine. So that was the first one. And my biggest fear was I'm not going to have the money. Well,
Hmm.
in this particular deal, we actually paid for it cash. And then I was like, well, I can't hang on to this for too long. So I had a local bank that was willing to do a refi, cash out refi. And they were like, man, this is a really good property. So we ended up doing a cash out refi on that one. And then worked with that same lender. And then we bought our second property, which was a duplex.
Hmm.
And at first they were able to lend on the deal, but I said, hey, this is such a good deal that would you consider doing a HELOC or line of credit on this one? She's like, oh no, we wouldn't do that. And so once they did the appraisal, once they saw what we bought it for, now all of a sudden she came back to me. She goes, wow, you got a really good deal on this house. I said, yeah. She goes, well, we'll fund this one, but would you like to also have $25,000 in the form of a HELOC? I'm like, absolutely. So what I'm trying to get at here is the rental piece. I was always fearful about money and how we're going to, be able to manage all these things at the same time. We've never done, property management. So I said from the get go, I'm not managing a property. Let's
Hmm.
buy it right, and let's build that cost in, and let's find good property managers, and let's focus. If we're going to buy rentals, let's focus on buying rentals. Don't buy it and then focus on managing it. That was my, just because I didn't ever want to manage a rental property. So
Hmm.
we did that, and we went from 0 to 50 doors in 11 months. And it wasn't without challenges. Like, we're like, man, how are we going to fund this deal? And where's the money going to come from? But we just made that commitment. And so I think for people that are starting out, at some point you're going to get to this place where you're going to say, wow, wholesaling is great. It can earn me a good living. However, it's so transactional. You get to a point where you're like, I'm paying taxes on everything. And
Hmm.
so you've got a high paying job. Okay. And so my thought process on this is, hey, figure out a way. Maybe it's for every three or every five that you assign, keep one of them.
Hmm.
And so when I started out, I said no to rentals for so long that when we finally bought them, it had to meet our criteria. And so there were a lot of people that were buying at 1%, right? That was kind of this thing like, oh, if you buy it at
Hmm.
1%, you're good. And so for us in bigger markets, and we still hold true to this today, we will only buy at 1.3% or better. And
Hmm.
so that makes a big difference, because at 1.3%, I can guarantee you that you're going to have both equity and cash flow on that property.
Yep.
Almost always, unless it's like a really high dollar amount property, you're gonna do well. So that was the first thing. Well, in South Carolina last year, what we realized is we found this little niche market that we
Hmm.
didn't even intend to go to. So kudos to radio and TV for helping us, actually forcing our business out. So when you do those marketing channels, what happened was now all of a sudden we're focusing on this area right here, but you're
Hmm.
doing that media that's reaching 2 and 3 hours outside of your market. And we were getting so many of those leads that were like, well, what are we supposed to do? Our acquisition manager was driving out there and he's like, dude, this is not sustainable. Like, I'm losing an hour and a half times two to go see a property. So what do? We found an acquisition manager that can serve those areas. And
Mm.
so now we found this little market because out of necessity, and it's a good cash flowing market. And we realized, holy cow, there's not a lot of investors here. There's no sophisticated investors that we see. And so we're buying houses for 20, 40, 60,000. We're renting those for 9, 11, 1,500 bucks a month.
Wow.
Our minimum criteria for buying is 1.5 in that market.
Yeah,
But here's the
that's great.
deal. So here's a couple things that we found is those are the perfect markets to find those tired landlords or those owners that own 4, 5, 10 plus properties, because most investors there are, maybe they're struggling wholesalers, or they're people that they're not really marketers, but they're maybe acquiring a property here, a property there. So we go in, we use all of our marketing to find the sellers, and we might buy 5 properties, we might buy 10 properties, we might buy one
Mm.
property, but we picked up 4 duplexes and a quad for 500,000 last year. It was
Hmm.
kicking off 6,900 in cash flow the day we bought it, and we're working on stabilizing those. We've refinanced them for almost 800,000, and we're trying to get rentals up. We're close to 8,000 right now. We picked up 4 houses from one seller who's like, just make me an offer. We bought 4 single family houses for $110,000, and they're probably worth today 265,000. So I'm looking to refinance those pretty soon.
Yeah,
And they generate 3,600 a month in rent. That's like a four
crazy.
bagger.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that came through rentals, and that came through a market that we did not want, we were not looking for. We found it by accident, and then we're like, holy cow, this is a gold mine. And so I would just say for anyone that's kind of getting started or kind of at that, looking for what's next, figure out a way to buy properties, because it's going to lower your taxes. You're going to get the depreciation. But last year, from the cost segs that we did cost
Hmm.
segregations. So I think we have like $600,000 in cost seg depreciation that we're able to take advantage of. That's going to offset, the taxes that we have. So, anyways, there's so many benefits, and you don't know what you don't know. But
Hmm.
once you get started in buying one, now it forces you to start to look at, how do I improve that? How do I get more? How do I raise money? And so it's going to challenge you. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's going to really allow you to move from that active income where you're paying tons of taxes to, how do you have something that's more recurring every month, and you don't have to go and be a massively transactional company all the
Yeah.
time. So that's what I like about it.
And one thing that sometimes, because I've heard of people too saying they go to these kind of markets just outside their market, right? And they're able to get some good rental properties. But one pushback I've heard from other people is finding property management and finding construction in those smaller markets can be tough. So how have you
Yep.
guys gone about handling that?
Yep, we had the same problems. So obviously, we're first going for referrals. Hey, is there
Mhm.
anyone online that's got 5-star reviews? Hey, are there any other investors that are using property management companies or have property management companies of their own? So in this market, actually, one of our first properties we bought was a 30-unit multifamily.
Wow.
This
Okay.
was different. This was different from that one. We had no experience in that market, so we actually found the best that we could tell,
Mhm.
through all of our research. Hired them, and we had our challenges, but they did a decent job, and you just kind of dove in and worked with them and worked through the mud. Um, I would say that we bought that 30 unit, we ended up flipping it, so we no longer own it, and we have found another property management team that does a really good job with single family, and I would just say it's trial by fire sometimes.
Mhm.
So um, we've kind of shifted some things around. We tried two property management companies at once. The one didn't really wasn't effective, so we moved everything to the other one, and that's who we're focusing on now. But the same thing you asked about construction. I mean, yeah, I mean it's challenging. Fortunately, the acquisition manager we hired in that market, he's like the mayor, so he knows a lot of different people. And so what
Yeah.
he did is he had a bunch of his own rental houses beforehand. So he had some guys that he would work with. But in our situation, we're like, hey, we want to acquire 150 to 300 doors and we want to buy portfolios. That's what we're looking for. We want,
Hmm.
20, 50, 100. I mean, we're negotiating some big deals right now. And so we have to have multiple crews. So he went out and
Yeah.
said, hey, who are the best guys and do they want work all the time? Because we always have a house for them. So, like, literally
Hmm.
in that market right now, we've got two crews going. We've got one flip. We've got two rentals. We just closed on another one today. We're closing on two next week. So it's like, if you can provide the work and you can provide, you can create a good atmosphere for those crews. um I think they'll stick with you. And so we've had really good success with that. But I mean, we had our challenges starting out. We had to build it, we had to go through the fire, and
Yeah.
ultimately my acquisition manager, he's kind of managed that, and now we've put a project manager in place to do that. So it's working out really well. But man, just like anything else, like, it's hard at first, but like, you just gotta know, like, dude, there's no other option. You have to find it. So
Right. Right. Cool. Well, we're getting to the end here, and there's always two questions that I like to ask at the end. So the first is kind of a fun one, which is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation you've ever experienced with a seller?
yeah, so I would say the craziest or most uncomfortable would be, um, I went into a house that I was told was haunted. And
Okay.
so I'm in the house with the seller, and listen, I don't know if the seller was setting me up or what, but the house was in really, really rough shape. It was definitely a hoarder house.
Hmm.
Um, some of the lights in the house didn't work. There were like pizza boxes from probably 5 years ago. Um, After the fact, I noticed there were all sorts of bugs that you can imagine were in there. But while I was in there, the seller is talking to me, and we're trying to have a conversation. Like, the light starts flickering, the light goes off, and then we hear, like, there's no one else in the house with us, and something falls down the steps. I'm like, what is that? And the seller says, oh, that's just the other person that lives here. I'm like, well, what do you mean, the other person that lives here? And so this is kind of happening. I'm like, dude, this is just weird. This is just odd. Like, so I don't know if the house was haunted. They told, like, the seller told me, hey, this house is haunted. I just want to let you know that sometimes there's activity, sometimes there's not. It's not violent, but weird things will happen. Lights will flicker off. Sometimes you hear these weird noises. Doors will start shutting. And so I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So I didn't really think anything of it, like, whatever. And then some of this stuff started happening. So I'm like, I don't know if that's the ghost. I don't know if it's the bad electrical. But it was very strange. I was like, I got out of there. I'm like, man, like, all right, I'm I'm not sure about this house.
So you didn't buy that
I
one?
might. I'm like, maybe I should call the priest and have him come and pray over and do the exorcism, right? So
Yeah. That's funny. So second question is, if you could go back in time to, when you were, looking for that first deal, um, knowing what you know now, what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
for the first, man, for the first deal, huh?
First deal. Yeah.
First deal. Man, I would just say that don't don't count your chickens. So I did it twice. I did it twice. I thought I had the 30K plus assignment fees. I made the stupid mistake of going and hiring an SEO company that was really expensive. I'm like, no, we're good. I've got all the money, so let's just do the 12-month contract. So I locked myself in, and I think that it's common sometimes that you're like, man, I've already accounted for this money. This deal's closed. It's in the bag. And I would just say,
Hmm.
when you're first starting out, you don't know what you don't know. And so expect the unexpected at all times. Just do whatever you got to do to get things to the closing tables. Pick one channel, figure out how to be successful with it, and then do 5 deals. Figure out a way to do 5 deals and then decide, hey, it's time now to maybe pick up another marketing channel, or hey, how do I
Hmm.
maybe hire an assistant or do something different? But even 5 deals is like, you're still a rookie at 5 deals. But at 5 deals, you've probably have some war stories. You probably have some that you've lost along the way. And so that 5 deals might come in, I would say for a lot of newer people, it might take 6 months to get 5 deals. It might take a whole
Hmm.
year. But once you do 5 deals, now you figure some things out. You can start analyzing, doing a post mortem of, hey, what could I do better? Or what if I followed up? Or what if I added a CRM and wasn't managing everything off of Excel or whatever? Now you start building.
Yeah, it's a good piece of advice. Yeah. Um, cool. Well, if people want to reach out to you after the show, whether it's about, connected TV, or if they want to reach out to you, maybe they have a deal in your market or just questions for you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so people can reach me. Just find me on Facebook. You can direct message me. You can email me, or I would just tell you, hey, just call or text me. My number. If Is it cool if I give out my
Yeah, man.
cell?
Give it out. Yeah.
All right, just call or text me 615-670-8153. That's the easiest way. I pretty much will respond usually pretty quickly. And then, if you want to talk, you want to set something up, you want to talk CTV, you want to talk lead gen, like, I'm open to all that stuff. I love helping people out. I love talking shop. But I'm gonna tell you a lot. I'm gonna tell you everything I know. I just, once you get me going, I'm gonna just vomit all over the place. So if that's something that, you want to talk about any of these things, I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to help you out. And then, on the flip side, if you have any great tips for me, I'd love to hear them too. So
Cool, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show today. It was great.
awesome, man. Thanks for having me. I really